Hello, my name is Cyclones Oz, and this is your evening update on the tropical cyclone situation in the Coral Sea. Tropical low 03U is strengthening and developing at this time. It is expected to head towards Queensland, where a devastating cyclone landfall is possible. It's not expected at this point, but it is possible. And I'm going to be giving you your latest forecast updates and information in this update. So make sure you stick around to the end to get all of the relevant information. There'll be an update tomorrow morning surrounding the details that we'll get overnight. And I'm thinking that the Bureau of Meteorology might pull the trigger on this in around 24 to 36 hours time, upgrading it to a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone, giving it the name of Kirrily. So we're taking a look right now at the satellite imagery on this system. You can see it's puffing up some pretty nice convection, some nice thunderstorm activity around the center of circulation. These cloud tops are approaching minus 90 degrees Celsius, so very cool cloud tops indeed. That is a sign that there are intense thunderstorms around the center. Now, the reason why I'm not totally impressed by this satellite imagery is because the thunderstorms are in no way, shape or form organized at this point. The only thing that we have to indicate that this is a tropical low and not just a cluster of tropical thunderstorms is because there is actually a low-level center of circulation, which you'll be able to see a little bit more clearly as some of these lower-level clouds through here, the very small wispy clouds, fly into the tropical cyclone on the southern side. But that's our only sign that this is actually a tropical low. So it's not looking very impressive at this point, and it hasn't had the best start to life that we were initially expecting. So that's some good news for the Queensland coastline. However, conditions ahead of this system are very, very good for this cyclone, and it is expected that this will rapidly intensify at some point in its lifespan and become a dangerous, severe tropical cyclone. In fact, some forecasts suggesting Category 5 status on the Australian scale as it approaches a landfall site between Townsville and Bowen. So we're going to jump over to the forecast right now, the wind forecast, and we're going to see what's in store for this cyclone over the next 10 days. Starting things off with the Access G3 forecast model, you can see the cyclone developing over the next sort of 24 hours. It doesn't get to cyclone status until probably about Sunday morning, and this is when I'm expecting the Bureau of Meteorology to pull the trigger. Sunday afternoon, we'll likely be seeing this get upgraded to Tropical Cyclone Kirrily, the second named tropical cyclone in the third tropical cyclone of the Australian season. It's been a busy start for an El Nino. Yeah, let me tell you, and I'll get into that a little bit later on in the video, but you can see it rapidly intensifies Sunday night and into Monday morning, becoming a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone by Monday evening local time. In fact, more like around Tuesday midnight as it approaches the outer reefs from the Queensland coastline, Willis Island here and Marion Reef down here. Now, it would be great, and I said this in the video this morning, that if the Bureau of Meteorology could supply radar imagery, or even like mobile Doppler radar imagery on these reefs here, that would be fantastic for giving us a greater idea of how this tropical cyclone is strengthening. And if you've got the power to enaction that would be a fantastic thing, let me tell you, and that will definitely be saving property and maybe even lives on the Queensland coastline. Now, as we get into Tuesday and or later on into Tuesday, this cyclone continues its rapid strengthening, jolting around a little bit and then moving further towards the west. Actually, it looks like it's heading a little bit further north than we were initially expecting it to, but it remains a powerful Category 4 strength tropical cyclone by Wednesday morning. And it is really slow moving at this point. It holds its intensity, but it remains really slow moving as it heads towards the Queensland coastline. And it's not until Wednesday that it actually gets its act together and really starts moving towards the Queensland coastline with a little bit of haste, but still, it will remain a relatively slow moving but strong tropical cyclone, making the absolute most of the fuel that it is going to have in the environment and in the sea surface temperatures as well, which are sky high, mind you. A high 940 millibar central pressure. It's definitely a Category 4 strength tropical cyclone at this point, and it strengthens right up towards landfall, where it looks like it's right on top of air. Now, the Access G3 model, which is the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast model, suggested a landfall on air this morning. What I'm going to be talking about a lot in this video as well is model congruency and consistency. When the models agree with each other and they're consistent along their forecasts and with each other, that's when we can say with a high degree of certainty and confidence that things are going to happen. Now, considering that this is not the first time that I've seen this in the forecast from the Access G3 model, a direct hit on air as a Category 4 strength tropical cyclone, I am saying with a high confidence that a landfall between Townsville and Proserpine is very, very likely at this point. Maybe even a 70% chance of actually occurring at this point, even though it's about a week away or 5 days away at this point. But just because of how congruent the models are with each other, or have been, that's because the forecast is getting a lot easier to make. This is why I'm saying that this is going to happen, and it's a lot more likely to happen. And then it moves inland, still as a relatively strong tropical cyclone. Just looking at this pressure here, I'd be saying that this cyclone might still have wind gusts up to 150 kilometers an hour as it passes outside of Charters Towers, south of Torrens Creek, and then towards Matabara and the, well, I guess, farming communities inland from the Queensland coastline. And then once again, it heads down the Queensland coastline towards Brisbane and the Gold Coast. I believe it re-emerges just outside of the Sunshine Coast, just north of Bundaberg, or just south of Bundaberg actually. And it's still a pretty strong tropical cyclone at that point, maybe Category 2 status as it gets itself over water for its second time, and moves through the southern Coral Sea and then back out to sea towards Norfolk Island and New Zealand. But still, it looks like it's turning extratropical here. This is probably a lot stronger than it actually will end up being, but it is a forecast and it gives us a good idea of what we can expect. Now we're going to take a look at the ECMWF forecast. The ECMWF has also been calling for that direct hit on Queensland. There are some models that suggest that the cyclone is going to stall in the Coral Sea and then move towards New Zealand, but they're not as reliable as some of these major forecast models that this website provides, windy.com. But you can still see the ECMWF model calls it to intensify in a very similar fashion to how the Access G3 model called for it to intensify. It sort of holds its ground for a little bit, and then until about Monday and Tuesday, it really starts to put on knots at a rate of knots, becoming a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone probably on Monday, and then rapidly strengthening throughout Wednesday as it approaches landfall on Thursday, making that landfall just north of Townsville outside of Cardwell, which again is a very likely scenario indeed. And the reason I don't favour this forecast as much is because it's a lot further north, and the steering currents aren't really favouring a northerly track for this tropical cyclone right now. The steering currents are either favouring a landfall further south around Townsville to sort of Bowen, that sort of area, or they're not favouring a landfall at all and actually drawing the cyclone away from the Queensland coastline towards Norfolk Island and New Zealand. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. That's not a very likely scenario, and it's also not what the Bureau of Meteorology or other news agencies are saying. So just a combination of all those three reasons is why I'm not expecting this cyclone to completely give Queensland a miss. I reckon it's going to slam into the coast as a pretty powerful, I would dare to say, a Category 4 strength tropical cyclone. This will be the strongest tropical cyclone since Marcy of 2015. And it will rival Debbie. It will be probably just as strong as Debbie, maybe even a little bit stronger. And it will be in a very similar fashion to Cyclone Debbie as she made landfall on Hamilton Island. It will be strong, it will be big, it will be slow moving, it will be a nasty system. The only key difference that I can really differentiate those systems is the fact that Debbie was quite a bit more slow moving than this tropical cyclone, which means Debbie dumped a lot more rainfall. Now we're taking a look at the GFS forecast model here, a direct hit on Townsville, bringing the worst conditions ashore to Townsville and down towards Ayr as well. It's still a very powerful tropical cyclone here. A pressure of 953 millibars for the GFS would probably equate to a Category 4 strength tropical cyclone as well. The GFS is often quite wrong with peak wind speeds, so keep that in mind if you do look at the GFS forecast model a lot. They're often very big low ballers with the wind speed, so don't trust the wind speeds on the GFS. Generally, as a rule of thumb, at about another 50 to 60% of those wind speeds. So on 70 knots, you're probably looking at closer to 120 knot peak wind speeds, which is a huge and very powerful tropical cyclone. Indeed, or not 120 knots, probably about 105 to 110 knots. So still a Category 5 strength tropical cyclone. Not nearly as brash as what I was saying, but still a very, very powerful tropical cyclone. Now, there's been a couple of comments on this channel saying that peak wind gusts of 150 kilometers an hour are nothing, and to a degree, this part of the world is built for peak wind gusts up to 150 kilometers an hour in these tropical cyclones. However, peak wind gusts to 225 kilometers an hour, it doesn't matter what kind of structure you're in, you're going to expect trees to be uprooted and flying around like missiles and debris. Power poles will be completely toppled. You'll get a lot of flying debris. Tin roofs will likely blow off in 220 kilometer an hour wind gusts, and this is what this tropical cyclone is expected to bring ashore as it makes landfall. So it's not one to be taking lightly, and it's not one to be saying things such as, oh, it's just a Category 2 or a Category 3 strength tropical cyclone. This is a really serious situation. It's a pretty powerful tropical cyclone that we've got in the making here, and conditions, which I'm just about to show you in the form of sea surface temperatures, are sky high. They're really, really warm, and the closer you get to landfall as well on the East Australian current, 30 to 31 degrees Celsius in one or two spots. Very, very warm indeed. That is jet fuel conditions for tropical cyclones to intensify over. So it's really quite nasty stuff, and it's something to be taking very, very seriously because this cyclone has the potential to get to Category 5 status, and not just that, but to make landfall on Australia as a Category 5 strength tropical cyclone, which is not something you see every year. It's kind of a 1 in 5 year event, and normally those Category 5 strength tropical cyclones blast somewhere like 80 Mile Beach or Whoop Whoop in Western Australia or on the Gulf of Carpentaria. They really hardly ever affect major population centres. The last very significant Category 5 status was, of course, Cyclone Yasi of 2011. And a Category 5 strength landfall on the Queensland coastline would be comparable to Cyclone Yasi. So it's a very serious situation indeed, not one to be taken lightly. Now we're going to take a look at peak rainfall accumulations from this tropical cyclone as it makes landfall. Not much has changed from this morning. In fact, it doesn't look like anything's changed from this morning in terms of rough numbers for rainfall. Once again, this is a forecast, so things can and they will change depending on where this cyclone makes landfall and how much thunderstorm activity it blows up in inflow bands and so forth. One thing that I'm very certain with is anywhere south of the system's landfall site, so basically anywhere south of Townsville, and you could draw a line about 500 kilometres south down to maybe Gladstone or Rockhampton, you could be expecting some huge rainfall totals along the coastal ranges where you'd be seeing widespread areas pick up 500 to 600 millimetres, and 1 or 2 isolated spots might get to 700 or 800 millimetres of rain. So this is flooding rainfall. It will cause some very significant flooding. The system is expected to move fast enough not to dump 500 millimetres from its initial landfall or on its landfall site, but there will definitely be places that pick up 150 millimetres in 3 hours within the eye walls of this system. And accumulations from the cyclone's core could tickle 300 or 400 millimetres in 1 or 2 locations outside of Townsville or Ayr. The more mountainous the area is, and if those mountains are exposed to the coastline, the more rainfall you can expect. But a lot of rainfall in general is just expected from this tropical cyclone as it makes landfall and blasts ashore throughout Queensland. And also a lot of rainfall expected inland around Matbarra, down towards, I'd say, Emerald and then to Bundaberg and so forth. A lot of rainfall could be expected in those areas as well, inland on some of the hills, 300 to 400 millimetres and 1 or 2 spots of maybe 500 millimetres outside of Billawheeler. Also a lot of rainfall down towards Hervey Bay, the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane as the remnants of the cyclone move out of this area. You could be seeing 1 or 2 spots pick up to 400 millimetres on the Scenic Rim as well, just outside of Brisbane. So a lot of rainfall is expected down there as well on the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. So overall, very, very wet for Queensland from this tropical cyclone. But it's going to be pretty hit and miss in terms of rainfall because the cyclone's likely not going to stall over land. The rainfall patterns will be quite unpredictable and quite hard to predict as this cyclone moves ashore. But what I can say for certain is anywhere on the southern side that receives these inflow bands, you could be expecting a really substantial amount of rainfall from this tropical cyclone, and it will come in heavy showers as well. So the risk of flash flooding and then riverine flooding afterwards is certainly going to be there, that's for sure. Now, I will take a look at storm surge briefly because it's often a factor overlooked in Australian tropical cyclones, but because this storm will be moving over shallow waters adjacent to the Great Barrier Reef and then inland towards bays such as Cardwell and then down towards Townsville, that's a little bit of a cove there. You'll be expecting some pretty big sea conditions, some big waves, probably approaching sort of the 20 to 25 feet mark at 7 to 8 or maybe even 9 meters in some places here. And expect a storm surge that will probably, I would say, in some places maybe at least 2 or 3 meters above the highest astronomical tide levels. So locations around here, around Ayr on the river delta, you could be expecting some really big waves through there, and on mangrove swamps up towards Townsville and Cardwell, also expect some really big wave heights and some pretty decent coastal inundation as well. So if you live in an area that's prone to flooding on tropical cyclones or on the highest astronomical tide, then it's a very good idea to get your cyclone emergency plan enacted sooner rather than later. And get your sandbags ready. I wouldn't do it right now because there is still that chance that the cyclone completely misses this area, swings south or swings out to sea, or even swings north, as some models are kind of suggesting, but really, really weakly and with very low confidence. There is that chance, and you don't want to prepare for absolutely nothing. So I would wait until about Monday morning and see what the forecast is Monday morning. And if you've still got that tropical cyclone coming for your area consistently, then I would definitely start to prepare. And I will outline those areas very specifically on the Monday morning update and also in the Monday evening update as this cyclone draws a lot closer to land, because it looks like Thursday will be landfall day. So any time after Wednesday evening, conditions will very much start to rapidly deteriorate 4 places between Cardwell right down towards maybe Bowen or even Proserpine in 1 or 2 places. It looks like the landfall site though is kind of booked in for a location around Townsville at this point. I'm looking at all the forecast models and that's what they're suggesting. However, things can and they will change over the coming couple of days, and there's no better way to stay up to date with the Australian weather situation than by subscribing to the Cyclones Oz channel, and leave a like on the video while you're at it as well, and tell me how I can improve in the comment section down below. But I would also like to say to just close this video off, if you are enjoying my work and you wish to support it a little bit further monetarily speaking, click the join button down below. I've got access to some perks down there. I believe they start at $4.99 a month, and if you'd like to support the channel that way, that would be fantastic. It supports all the equipment, the subscription stuff that's required to make these videos, and every little bit counts. So thank you so much in advance for supporting my work here, and it's really generous of you. And you get a shout out in every video, and you get access to a member badge which tells other people in the comment section that you are a valued member of my community. So thank you so much, but subscribing still monetarily helps, and just watching these videos as well is greatly appreciated. So thank you to every single viewer that's made it to this part of the video. It really does mean a lot. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Bye bye.